Well, hey there, Raider Nation. Jesse Merrick here to break down the Broncos and the Raiders game on Thursday Night Football. Bear with us tonight, guys, because I'm trying to do a live stream here. Not 100% sure if this one is working, so I'm just checking on Twitter real quick to make sure. I tried this at the beginning of the year, had some issues when I was out there in Denver, so I'm not 100% sure if it is or not. So we're just going to get this thing rolling. Still trying to figure out some of the software in terms of doing things live, but I do want to get this thing going for you guys more and more often. I would love to do some live shows whenever possible, to interact with a lot of you guys. But anyway, with that, let's dive into this game against the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. Man, was it an ugly game in every sense of the word, man. Let me tell you, the Raiders had every opportunity on offense to win this game. So that, to me, is where we have to start when we're breaking down this loss to the Denver Broncos in a game that, quite frankly, the Raiders, like I said, should have been able to win this thing. I mean, it's just insane that the offense couldn't get something going in this game. Look at it. There's a handful of things that are questionable in terms of the way Chip Kelly went about calling this game. So let's start to dive into some of those. One of them in particular, let's start on that 3rd and 6. Late in the game, there was about 4.5 minutes to go. Gino Smith is obviously hobbled, and I posted it up there on Twitter, actually. You guys go check it out. I showed the routes. There's no hot route. Like, the Broncos were rushing 6 guys. It was very clear they were coming after him. Again, Gino is hobbled, and each guy is running past the sticks, which, don't get me wrong, how many times have we gotten on the Raiders for not throwing past the sticks and throwing short of the sticks and all that stuff? But at the same time, you do still have to have some sort of hot route to beat something like that. And again, guys, excuse me as I, may look off camera here and there as you guys are watching, because I'm trying to see if this live stream is indeed working. So apologize to the folks that are listening to all this after the fact as I try and work through some of the kinks of doing this. But again, you have to have some sort of hot route to help your quarterback out, who, again, is very clearly hobbled. Is there an argument to be made that maybe Gino, should have at some point, dove in there in audible to something, or had somebody, run a hot route, something like that? But again, the biggest thing is if you're Chip Kelly, like, help your quarterback out. He's very clearly hurt. He's gutting this thing out, and you're just going to leave him out there to dry. That, to me, is insane. To have him in that situation, especially with the game on the line. And then there's also the fact, too, that Brock Bowers gets 3 targets. This after he catches 12 passes for, I believe, 127 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Jaguars. Don't get me wrong, the Broncos defense is most definitely not the Jaguars defense, but you can't just let Brock Bowers disappear. He has 1 catch for 31 yards and 3 total targets on the night. Like, that is just insane that you're going to let your dog, especially after you traded Jacoby Myers, who was your number 1 receiver, you let your number 1 threat in Brock Bowers just be taken completely out of the game. The usage for him was very strange to me. Maybe he re-aggravated some things, and maybe that's why the usage was off. I really don't understand. I know it's a short week, and it was his first game back after missing 3 and have the bye week and all that stuff, but man, just kind of crazy the way his usage went. Also, too, again, some of the 3rd down situations, there's the 3rd and 2 when they did the QB sneak instead of running it with Ashton Genty. That's insane. And then another one, too, there was another 3rd down. I forget the yardage total, but I believe it was only like 3-4 yards. And they throw outside towards the numbers to Tyler Lockett on like a smash route. And obviously, if Gino puts it on him, he very likely falls forward for the first down there. So yeah, there's some accuracy things you can talk about in regards to that. But at the same time, what are we doing throwing to the sideline when you have Ashton Genty, the 6th overall pick back there, when you can just run it when you're very clearly having some success running the ball? Just very insane to see the way this thing was called by Chip Kelly. And again, we've said that a lot throughout the season. Pretty wild, though, to see that happen from a offensive coordinator who is the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. Again, on a short week, like, I don't know, simplify things and just trust your running back to get things done, especially when you got a quarterback that's beat up and an offensive line that's having trouble protecting as well. I mean, at the end of the day, they give up 6 sacks. I haven't had a chance to look at the pressures yet, but I'm sure it's through the roof. A patchwork offensive line. So, like, keep it simple, play downhill football, and lean on your running back that's supposed to be your identity. I mean, Ashton Genty still doesn't finish the day with 20 carries. That's insane to me. Overall, too, the defense was playing lights-out football. They started the game with 4 straight 3-and-outs forced. How do you not take advantage of that, especially on a short week against a division rival? I mean, that's just crazy. On the day, they actually had 7 total 3-and-outs and 2 interceptions. You go 28 minutes without even getting a first down. That is wild to me. And I'm not trying to sit up here and be this like shock jock screaming at the camera. I hate being that guy. But man, with an offense coordinator like Chip Kelly, how do you go over 28 minutes without a first down in a game? Again, that is one of, if not the best defenses in the NFL going right now. But at the same time, like, gotta figure out a way to get something going offensively, because that just does not work. And I'm looking at my phone here right now. According to the people that are out there, obviously I'm not out there in Denver for those of you guys that are watching. And Pete Carroll says that Gino Smith suffered a thigh bruise. He got smacked. Doesn't sound concerned about his availability for next week. Look, I know there's been a lot of people that have dogged Gino Smith. And yes, he has 12 interceptions. I believe that's tied for the league lead now. Plenty of ways that you can get on him for the decision making and stuff like that. The pick tonight, not his fault. We'll get into that at some point here. But man, was he battling through this thing. And again, the coaching staff probably should have saved him from himself. And maybe throw Pickett in there late in the game, a guy that can actually move around and stuff, and to be able to help you when you have a chance to win this game. But because he was very clearly hobbled, and all kudos to the world for Gino for trying to gut that one out and get through it. But man, that was brutal to watch for sure. And just the offensive outing, man, it's crazy. So we've seen them at times spread them out. You attack the edges, then you go run downhill, and that was kind of the recipe early on in the game, and things were moving for them. And then the wheels kind of fell off when the rookies started, having their issues. That was obviously something that struck up in this game. And look, I'll come out and say it. You guys were asking for the rookies to play. They trade Jacoby. They finally do play. I also did want to see more out of the rookies. At the end of the day, you got to get more out of your draft class and see what you can get out of them. But it's very clear the development still needs to happen. In terms of the Jack Bech call, a lot of people say that was a BS call. I mean, look, if you go back and look at it, he very clearly had the outside of his shoulder pad towards the sideline there, and the ref's going to call that every day. That wipes off, I believe, a 31-yard run by Ashton Jeanty. And then on top of that, Dante Thornton, we see the struggles and the lack of development there from him. In terms of the rub route that they were trying to run there. Very simple thing, like day one type of thing. When you're doing that, you got to act like you're running a route. You got to act like you're doing it. I played D2 football, and they taught me that. And I'm not trying to dog Dante by any means. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not an NFL player. I'm not that caliber guy. I just cover the team. But, like, you got to be able to, flash the hands, do something, not just straight up block. And that wipes a touchdown off the board. So those are two massive plays right there alone that put the Raiders offense behind the chains. Again, took 6 points off the board there in that case. And then also late in the first half, the long ball to Dante Thornton. Obviously, we've seen the Raiders struggle to get the deep passing game going. Well, Gino delivers a perfect ball to Dante Thornton, and he drops it. That would have put him in field goal range. And obviously, we'll get to the issues that Daniel Carlson had. But, man, that's one you have to haul in. And it's kind of crazy the way things haven't worked out for Dante Thornton here in the league. And, again, wide receiver is a tough position to play at any level, especially in the NFL. Obviously, the knock on him was the route tree and stuff like that. But this is a guy that, the deep ball was his bread and butter. That's why he's brought to Las Vegas. Has to haul that one in. He obviously knows that. And he was actually a very reliable reliable wide receiver in college when he was targeted, especially on deep balls. I believe he had the highest QBR, when he was targeted in college football. So of all the wide receivers coming out of the draft, I believe his QBR was the highest on deep throws. So again, that's one of those things where it's just kind of a curious case. They haven't been able to connect. He hasn't been able to do it. The concentration maybe hasn't quite been there. And then on top of both Jack Bech and Dante Thornton struggling in terms of the critical penalties that really hurt this team in a close game, there's also Ashton Jeanty, who has been so unreal for this team out of the backfield. Again, we saw it last week against the Jaguars, how solid of a receiver he is out of the backfield. He obviously did it in college 2 years ago, led the country in receiving yards by a running back. And then this time around, obviously, look, yes, if Gino puts it on him or leads it out a little bit more, not puts it on because it actually hit him right in the chest, but if he leads him a bit more, then yes, he's got some room to run. But like that is still one that Ashton will tell you, and anybody that's ever played the game will tell you, if that one hits you in the chest, that one's right here, whether you got to jump or not, you have to catch that one. It almost looked like he kind of was turning. And again, that's another one where Jeanty knows that. Like he would admit that. He's got to come down with that one. And again, another critical moment there where the Broncos go ahead and take over, I believe, around the 30-yard line, So just the offense continuing to put them in really, really bad situations, week in and week out, really, but also, possession in and possession out, and the defense just kept putting out those fires. The fact that they hold the Broncos to just 10 points is insane. I mean, let's go look back here at time of possession real quick too. Time of possession is real even, but I go back and look at it in the first quarter. Like the Raiders had their opportunities offensively. I took note of what it was coming out of the first quarter there, and let's see as I pull up the notes here. Time of possession, the Raiders owned it in the first quarter. That was their most complete first quarter to date, actually. The Raiders won the time of possession battle 11 minutes and 22 seconds to 3 minutes and 38 seconds in terms of time of possession for the Broncos. Like I said, the Raiders defense was lights out to start. We've actually seen that from them a lot of times throughout the year. They've been really good on the first drive of the game in most of the games, again, except for the Chiefs game. But for the most part, they've been really good on the first drive of the game. And this one forced 4 straight 3-and-outs, and the offense is not able to capitalize. Just, again, brutal. And there's so many opportunities for the Raiders to go up 2 scores, and just the missed opportunities, taking back those chunk plays, taking points off of the board. The team is not good enough to overcome those type of things. And again, that's the youth sticking up at some of those times, and it's just kind of tough when that does happen for you, And again, the offensive line, was an issue. Again, 6 sacks on the day. That's brutal against a team in the Broncos that came in leading the NFL in sacks. They had 40 on the year. The next closest team was the Lions. They had 28 sacks on the season. And then now the Broncos go and finish with 6 sacks on the day. 46 sacks on the season. That's crazy. That's an insane number. And again, it's a patchwork offensive line, but things were kind of cooking for him. Again, I thought it was weird the way that when Genty seems to be rolling and has the hot hand, Chip kind of goes away from him at times. I think he's one of those dudes. He's a volume rusher. You have to keep feeding him the rock and keep getting him the ball in those situations. You look at it before Jackson Powers-Johnson went out of the game, they were doing pretty well. Ashton was averaging 4.3 yards per carry. With Jackson Powers-Johnson in the game, they had 10 rushes for 43 yards. Without Jackson Powers-Johnson in the game, they rushed for just 31 yards. But then if you go and realize that Ashton's run that got called back by Besh, which actually was away from the play anyway, so it didn't really even impact it, that was, I think, a 31-yarder. So they would have had even more had, that one not gone there. So obviously a huge loss to not have Jackson Powers-Johnson out there. We'll see what ends up happening with him. And then they go and lose Dylan Parham as well. So they're operating with a backup left tackle and 2 backup guards. And, look, a center and offensive line for the most part that have struggled. We've seen DJ Glaze struggle at times. Nick Bonino, I can't talk. Nick Bonito. That one's hard to say sometimes, huh? Nick Bonito was eating it up out there. Many times we did see them kind of slide protection away from him, which is also kind of crazy. You trust a back to block him one-on-one, just insane. Which, speaking of backs, there was the one by Mostert there. I mean, he has played some really good football for this Raiders team. I was talking about it last week, how many times he's come through in critical situations, and even especially in the return game when he's been called upon. And in this game in particular, if I can find the notes, I forget exactly where it was. Yeah, it was a 3rd and long, that was a 3rd and long where he actually picked up a first down, but there was the pass protection where he kind of missed on that one. And I can't seem to find it here in my notes. There's a handful of things that I, circled in terms of the missed opportunities throughout this thing. But obviously, you guys know which one I'm talking about in terms of the missed protection there. And if he picks that up, Gino Smith has some time and is able to kind of look and read down the field and stuff. So, again, just a lot of things compounding for this Raiders team, issues that they're not good enough to be able to overcome. And again, on the day, I mean, let's see what the penalty total ended up being for him. It was, 11 penalties for 83 yards. Like, the Raiders just can't overcome those things. No matter who the coach is, no matter who the players are, they always are one of the more penalized teams in the league. Got to figure out a way to go and got to figure out a way to be better on 3rd down as well. They go 4 for 15 on 3rd downs. Again, it's tough to get any rhythm going when you constantly have these penalties that put you behind the chains, but you hope in having an offensive coordinator like Chip Kelly, who's one of the highest paid, he is the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. He's going to be able to coach around that, especially when guys go down. And it's not an ideal situation, but that's why he gets paid the big bucks to coach around those non-ideal situations and figure out a way to make things easier on his quarterback and also figure out a way to make things easier on his running back as well when those guys aren't out there, And again, on a short week, you think things are going to be more simplified. They're going to concentrate more on the running game. And that, again, just doesn't end up happening. I mean, look, they go ahead and pass 27 times, and they rush 25 times. So fairly even, to be fair. But you have 3 of those carries going by way of Gino Smith, and obviously he tucks and runs on a couple of those. The one to Brock Bowers as well. Take that out of the equation. Like, again, Ashton Genty finishes with just 19 carries for 60 yards. I think there was still more meat on the bone there. We talked to him this week, and he noted the fact that Ashton does lead all running backs in terms of touches and rushing yards, and that is totally true, and I get that, but at the same time, it just feels like there's meat left on the bone with him. When he is getting hot, don't move away from him. Stick with him a little bit longer, I think, in my mind, and maybe that'll help things with this offense to get it going. And again, it is hard as a play caller, as a quarterback, as any offensive player, when there are those penalties that throw you behind the sticks. It's tough, it's brutal. They got to figure out a way to clean that stuff up because they're not going to be able to, respond in those situations if they can't figure out a way to clean that stuff up. But, again, defensively, there's not much you can say about this team. I mean, shout out to Caillou Blue Kelly, too. This is a guy that gave up, the most yards in the league as a corner for quite a while when he was starting out there. Gets benched, comes back in tonight, comes through with 2 interceptions when Bo Nix was throwing it up. And, shout out to him for being able to come through in this game. And kind of, even in regards to that, I was going back and forth. And I'm so sorry, I can't remember your Twitter handle, but it was like North Texas or Central Texas Raider. All the respect in the world to any of you guys when we're talking back and forth on Twitter, too, just so you guys know that. I love the interaction back and forth with everybody. But, he was saying, bench Devin White and, throw one of the younger linebackers in there, and I just don't think that's the answer. And I know you're not saying to bench everybody, but, look, Devin White has flashed a time, and I know he's been hit or miss, and in coverage, he's struggled. The linebackers as a whole have. Coverage is not exactly their forte, as linebackers. But I don't think the answer is to throw the young guys in there. I don't think they're ready for that yet. But overall, we are going to see both Jack Besh and Dante Thornton get much more work going forward now that, Jacoby Myers is out of the fold. What's that going to look like for them? Obviously, this is what development looks like. There's going to be some struggles. They're young players. They're trying to wrap their heads around a very complex Chip Kelly offense that probably needs to be simplified a bit more, especially in a short week, to help all involved. But this is, again, what the development's going to look like for some of those guys. One thing, as I was going back and forth with a lot of you guys on Twitter, I tried to answer as many of the comments as I could this week while we were watching the game because, it's kind of one of those games, where you have the time to be able to do that. And I'm really surprised that we haven't seen more from Tonka Hemingway. He was active in this game. I thought he was going to be involved more in the rotation. I'll be honest. Obviously, as you guys can see here, I am not in Denver. I'm at the home studio. So I was actually watching it on Prime Vision. It's a little hard to tell who's who there. You can tell some of the body types, so sometimes it starts to blend in, especially with the white jerseys with the silver numbers. Kind of hard to see. So I don't know what his snap total was like. I don't know if he even got any snaps. But that's a guy that I thought we were going to see a lot more from early on in training camp. He was involved in the mix. Max spoke very highly of him. Again, he was active today over Lucky Fotu and doesn't make an impact, or at least as far as I noticed there, and didn't see him get a ton of snaps. So, real curious to see what the development's going to look like for a lot of these young guys going forward as the Raiders, again, now, I know a lot of you guys are punting on the season. They're 2-7. These guys aren't going to be punting on the season, obviously. But this one, to me, just again boils down to missed opportunities and special teams. Man, we didn't even talk about that. I mean, special teams, especially for this organization and the history that they have, it's pretty tough that they are having the issues that they're having. AJ Cole, first of all, hat tip to him. He was punting like a madman out there tonight. A couple balls pinned deep. He was very active because the offense wasn't doing too hot. But, man, he punted like a champ. And, moved pretty well. Okay, so actually I'm seeing right now, because I've got Twitter pulled up here, they're saying that Jackson Powers-Johnson had an ankle injury. He's expected to be out for an extended period of time. At least that's what Coach Pete Carroll said. Obviously, I'm doing the podcast now, so I haven't a chance to listen to what they're saying up there. I will once we're done with this one. But that's a big loss for the Raiders without JPJ out there. Obviously, he's played with the most tenacity of anybody on that offensive line, and I think he's probably played the best of anybody along that offensive line since Colton Miller went out. So that's not a good sign for this offense that has struggled overall all year to get anything going, to score points. I mean, shoot, again, they score 7 points. You have Chip Kelly, and I mean, man, let's just go back and look at the point totals here throughout the year. I know you guys know it because you've been watching, I've been covering it, but man, you go back and look at it. They scored 20 points in the opener. They scored 9 points against the Chargers, just 24 points against Washington, 24 points against Chicago, 6 points against Indy, 20 points against Tennessee, no points against Kansas City, obviously, and they go and score a season-high 29 points against Jacksonville, and that lost in overtime and only 7 points. I think there is an argument to be made about if you can keep Chip Kelly around. Again, I know there's a lot of youth around there on the offense, a lot of development, a lot of things that are pretty bad. But I'm even seeing right here now on Twitter, Richie Incognito, a guy who played for the Raiders, who played in the league for quite some time. He says the offensive play calling is a joke. You have Brian Baldinger talking about protection being slid away from Nick Benito. God, I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. Just things that you can't have happen. It's just it's a head scratcher. So yeah, I've been asked the question by a handful of folks, many times. Do you think that Chip Kelly survives the season? Man, at this rate, I don't know how you can when you pay him that kind of money. And if they move on from him, who takes over? I don't know. Maybe Ole does. He's a guy that obviously, had a lot of years with the Raiders, and probably the best the offense has looked at any point when he was coaching it, or at least since then. Maybe Philbin takes over. They played much better when Philbin was handling things last year. So I don't really know, and I'm not that guy. I hate calling for people to be fired or any of those things, because man, I don't want anybody to lose their job. But Chip Kelly has not produced enough as the offensive coordinator for the Raiders, being the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. And I know a lot of the things has been picks from Gino and things like that, but man, Chip Kelly is not making life easy on him or on this offense as a whole. And again, they know they've had injuries and penalties and things like that, but that's also some coaching and getting guys developed, making sure the moment's not too big for them, coaching proper techniques, all of those things. So yeah, I think there is an argument to be had, and I think I'm ready to have that conversation. I again hate calling for people's jobs, but man, I'm real curious to see what ends up happening with Chip Kelly. The way this season has gone. I mean, the fact that you can't score more than 29 points with the highest paid offensive coordinator is a problem. Prior to that, your highest points that you scored was 24 points. I mean, it's insane that the Raiders are at the bottom of the league offensively with a guy like that, especially when you have a defense that, again, we go back through there, obviously against the Colts, obviously against the Chiefs and the Commanders. Those are real crooked numbers, but the defense as a whole, I think what we saw from them tonight against the Denver Broncos, that's who that defense is. They're going to play winning football more often than not, I believe, on that side of the ball. And tonight was a lights-out performance by them against, a Broncos team that struggled most of the year outside of the fourth quarter, but it's not like the Broncos are lighting the world on fire offensively. But still, one hell of a performance against a really good play caller in Sean Payton. So it's just one of those deals where it's a head scratcher, literally and figuratively, as I actually do it for those of you guys that are watching. Didn't even mean to do that, but got to figure out a way to get something going offensively, and maybe you shake things up and change them. It's a lot of times when, coaches get fired at any level, that's when, things get interesting. It gives guys a jolt and things change. But again, this season looks like it's heading in a real bad direction. And now going forward, as we look at the schedule, obviously, the Raiders now have the Cowboys coming to town on Monday Night Football here in Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. And look, Dallas doesn't have a good defense. Their defense is like Swiss cheese, so maybe they can get something going there. But obviously that offense is a problem. So if the defense doesn't come to play, it's going to spell issues for this Raiders team moving forward. Then you have Cleveland at home as well. And look, we know the Browns aren't very good, but the rest of the way, it's the Chargers, the Broncos, the Eagles, Houston, who has one of the best defenses, if not, again, the best defense in football right now. You have the Giants, who are beat up, and you close the season out with Kansas City. The outlook's looking pretty bleak the rest of the way for the Raiders. We're not talking draft. I'm not doing any of that stuff right now on November 6th. That's ridiculous to be talking all that stuff. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the offseason. Actually, we'll have a lot to talk about in regards to that, as the Raiders will have a lot of things that they'll have to figure out. But man, again, just another tough one for the Raiders here. In a game that they very well could have won if the offense shows up. Again, going through some of the numbers, over 28 minutes without a first down. Brock Bowers has just 3 targets and 1 catch on the day after going off. Real curious to see next week when they get back out there, what things look like for him, just in terms of if he suffered a setback or anything like that. Again, I'm going to go back and listen to what Pete and them had to say. But with that, guys, I don't want to ramble on and on about this. We've kind of dove into the key issues in this game, and I think we've handled them for the most part of what was going on there. But yeah, going forward for the Raiders, they'll be back at practice on Monday and Tuesday. They're off through the weekend until then. I will be out of town, so I'm not going to be at practice on Monday. I'm going to definitely try and be back out there again on Tuesday. They'll be off on Wednesday and then back to a normal schedule after that. As for us, because the Raiders did play on Thursday Night Football, You won't catch us on the podcast here again until next Wednesday. So a little programming note for you there. And then obviously we will have our Friday morning podcast for you as we get ready for the weekend ahead in that Monday night football game. So make sure you tune in for that. Also, for those of you that are subscribed to the newsletter, that will be dropping, depending on when you guys listen to this, that will be dropping on Monday or on Friday morning. And then we will have our next newsletter the following Friday, again, because the Raiders aren't going to be playing this weekend. So just some programming notes and some content notes for you guys. But again, I'll have coverage on the road, of the Raiders on Monday while I'm out of town. And then on Tuesday, I'll try and be back down there for you. And we'll see what we hear from the team as they get ready for the Cowboys and try and get something going after now they dropped 2 games after beating the Tennessee Titans there. But obviously things, like I said, looking real bleak for them. We'll see what ends up going on for them, especially along that offensive line. Now Alex Kappa slots in as a starter at right guard. We'll see what happens with Dylan Parham going forward. But the Raiders are just not in a good spot. And I feel for you guys. But I always thank you guys for watching and listening, commenting, all of that stuff. If you haven't already, please go check us out online at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and subscribe to the podcast. And that's going to do it for me tonight, guys. We got to get rolling here. But, man, an interesting game for sure. A lot to wrap your head around. We'll be diving into more of this game and more of the stats in the newsletter, so make sure you check that one out. So, again, thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you again on Wednesday. Have a good one, guys.